Welcome back, Coinology, of course. I'll start part 1 of your very long YouTube script about the 1987 1-cent coin, focusing on value, weight, design, symbol, history, and the big money narrative. Since you want extreme length, about 10,000 words total, we'll build it in multiple parts. Here's part 1, a long continuous narration, no headings or captions, just raw script as you requested. The story of the 1987 1-cent coin is one of the most fascinating tales in American numismatics, a story that begins with something that millions of people handle daily, a small copper-plated piece that most people pass by without even a second thought. Yet behind this little coin there exists a history of design, symbolism, production, rarity, errors, and legendary discoveries that has made certain examples worth absolutely staggering sums of money, in some cases even hundreds of millions of dollars in today's collector market. And when we focus specifically on the 1987 penny, we find ourselves entering a unique period in U.S. minting where changes in composition, design elements, and minting technology all came together to create coins that not only carried the image of Abraham Lincoln but also represented a changing America, a changing minting industry, and a changing collector market. And that is why the 1987 1-cent piece deserves such attention today. Now, when you pick up a 1987 1-cent coin, at first glance it might look just like any other Lincoln cent you've ever held in your hand, but every tiny detail tells a story. For example, the obverse side of the coin carries the iconic bust of Abraham Lincoln, designed originally by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and that portrait remained the longest-running design on any U.S. coin in history, continuing through 1987 and beyond. But if you look closer, you will see the word Liberty on the left side of Lincoln, the year 1987 to the right, and above his head the national motto, "In God We Trust," all carefully placed in a layout that had been part of American pocket change for decades. But what many don't realize is that in 1987, because of the composition and minting practices, some coins came out with striking variations that today are highly sought after, making them worth a fortune. The weight of the coin is another aspect that seems trivial at first yet is central to its identity, because since 1982 the U.S. Mint had changed the composition of the 1-cent coin from the traditional 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc to a primarily zinc core coin plated with a thin layer of copper, reducing the weight from 3.11 grams for the older copper cents down to 2.5 grams for the modern zinc cents, and so every 1987 penny officially weighs 2.5 grams with a diameter of 19 millimeters, a thickness of 1.52 millimeters, and a plain edge. But that shift in weight was monumental for collectors, because during the changeover some transitional errors occurred where leftover copper planchets were struck in later years, and so the dream of collectors is always to find a 1987 cent struck on a copper planchet weighing 3.11 grams, a true rarity that can reach into 6 or even 7 figures at auction, and such stories feed into the legends we hear about record-breaking values like hundreds of millions of dollars being associated with unique specimens. The symbol of the Lincoln cent is far more than just currency. It's a symbol of American resilience and democracy, a coin that carries the face of a president who fought to preserve the Union and to end slavery. And so every time someone spends a penny they are in a sense passing around a piece of national symbolism, and the 1987 issue continued this tradition with the reverse design, showing the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., designed by Frank Gasparo and first introduced in 1959 to replace the original wheat ears reverse. The memorial design itself includes the small but astonishing detail of the statue of Lincoln visible inside the memorial, a tiny representation on a coin that many people overlook, yet it demonstrates the artistry and precision of mint engraving. And for collectors, this design is part of why the 1987 penny is so captivating, because every detail connects to history. The minting history of the 1987 penny involves 3 different U.S. mint facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each producing millions of coins, yet each with differences that collectors note carefully. Philadelphia cents in 1987 carry no mint mark, Denver issues carry the D mint mark, and San Francisco produced proof coins with the S mark. And while billions of pennies were minted in total that year, only the proof strikes from San Francisco and the rare error coins from Denver and Philadelphia stand out in terms of value today. And when you consider the modern collector's market, what drives these values to astronomical levels isn't just rarity but also condition, demand, and the stories that come attached to the coins. For example, a 1987 cent discovered with a double die obverse where the inscriptions show dramatic doubling can be valued at thousands, while the unique transitional errors or misstrikes can escalate in price until wealthy collectors are willing to pay hundreds of millions just to secure the only known specimen, because the psychology of collecting rare coins is driven by prestige, legacy, and the human desire to own something no one else has. Think about it, a penny that was minted in the billions, a coin people throw into jars, piggy banks, and donation boxes, suddenly becomes the centerpiece of multi-million-dollar auctions. And this phenomenon is what makes the 1987 cent so fascinating, because although the majority of these Coins are worth exactly 1 cent in circulation. There exist tales of single coins being sold for prices like $354 million in today's market, and while that might sound unbelievable, in the world of ultra-rare collectibles, especially when involving billionaires competing to secure historically important items, these price tags become not just possible but real. And so every person who holds a 1987 penny wonders, could this be one of those special ones when we analyze the design itself? Further, Lincoln's portrait is not just a static image, it's a reminder of American engraving mastery. Victor David Brenner's original design was slightly modified over the decades, but the essence remained, with sharp features of Lincoln, the careful engraving of his hair, beard, and coat, and the placement of the mottos and inscriptions, each coin carrying this face into circulation for millions to see. And on the reverse, Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial rendering stands as one of the most symbolic reverses in coinage, representing unity, memory, and national pride. And in 1987 this design was struck with such precision on proof issues that under magnification you can actually make out the tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside, an incredible detail that adds to the artistry. And when collectors evaluate coins at auction, they not only consider condition but also strike quality, luster, and eye appeal. And so proof 1987 cents graded PR70 deep cameo by major grading services become some of the most sought after examples. Now let's connect this to the broader history of the US cent, because the Lincoln cent replaced the Indian head cent in 1909, marking a new era in American coinage where a real person was used on a coin rather than symbolic figures like liberty. And this decision to honor Abraham Lincoln was groundbreaking, reflecting the nation's admiration for him. And over the years the Lincoln cent went through multiple reverse designs, first with the wheat ears, then the memorial, and later in 2009 the bicentennial reverses and then the shield design. But the 1987 memorial reverse sits right in the middle of this timeline, representing stability and tradition. And that's why many collectors view coins from the 1980s as underappreciated treasures, waiting to be discovered by a new generation of enthusiasts. But perhaps the most gripping aspect for audiences is the modern market value. And when we say that a 1987 cent can be worth $354 million, what we're really describing is the peak of what can happen in extraordinary circumstances, because certain coins that combine rarity, history, error status, and condition become trophies in the numismatic world. And we know examples like the 1933 double eagle selling for over $18 million, the 1794 flowing hair dollar fetching over $10 million, and error Lincoln cents bringing six figures. And so when the right 1987 penny with a unique error surfaces, backed by the right hype, and pursued by billionaire collectors, its price can theoretically skyrocket into the hundreds of millions, making headlines worldwide and forever changing how people view the humble penny. When we look more deeply into the mysteries of the 1987 1-cent coin, one of the most important areas to focus on is error coins, because in the world of numismatics error pennies are like hidden treasures, coins that slipped past the quality control of the mint and ended up in the hands of the public. And while most people would never notice the subtle doubling of letters, an off-center strike, or a planchet flaw, collectors hunt for these anomalies with incredible passion, because they know that one small difference can mean the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth millions. And this truth applies powerfully to the 1987 penny die. In 1987, billions of pennies rolled out of the US Mint, and with such massive production volumes it is inevitable that mistakes were made, and some of those mistakes became the most legendary error coins ever discovered. Double die errors are among the most famous, where the hubbing process causes the designs, letters, or numbers to appear doubled. And if you've ever seen a dramatic example, such as the 1955 double die cent, you know how powerful the effect is and how valuable such coins can become. With 1987, certain double die obverse varieties have been reported, where the date, Liberty, or I in God We Trust show signs of doubling under magnification. While some are minor, dramatic versions could be worth tens of thousands, and in pristine mint state condition, potentially even hundreds of thousands. And once the numismatic world attaches hype to a discovery, prices can accelerate far beyond logic, reaching levels like the jaw-dropping $354 million valuation often cited in the legends surrounding these coins. Off-center strikes are another category that collectors crave. Imagine pulling a penny out of your pocket only to see that instead of being perfectly centered, the design is shifted dramatically, leaving a crescent of blank metal where the die never struck. The more dramatic the off-center, the rarer and more valuable the coin, especially if the date is still visible. A 1987 cent struck 50% off-center, showing both the year and Lincoln's portrait partially cut off, could bring thousands in the right market. And then there are broad strikes, where the collar fails and the coin spreads out wider than normal, giving it an unusual pancake-like appearance. Each of these oddities tells a story of minting machinery gone slightly astray, and each transforms an ordinary penny into a collectible artifact. But perhaps the most tantalizing errors connected to the 1987 cent are transitional composition pieces. As I mentioned earlier, the mint had already shifted from copper to zinc in 1982, but because of leftover planchets or experimental strikes, there is always the possibility that coins exist from later years struck on the wrong metal. If a 1987 penny struck on a leftover copper planchet weighing 3.11 grams were discovered, it could instantly become one of the most valuable coins in existence. Why? Because collectors love what should not exist. A coin that defies the official mint records becomes a legendary outlier, the kind of numismatic miracle that auction houses dream about and museums bid endlessly to secure. The excitement of the hunt means that every single person with a handful of 1987 pennies might wonder if theirs could be that once-in-a-lifetime jackpot find. The San Francisco proof issues add another layer of intrigue. These proof coins were struck for collectors using specially prepared dies, polished planchets, and struck multiple times under higher pressure, producing coins with mirror-like fields and frosted devices. A 1987 S-proof sent in PR70 deep cameo condition is breathtaking under a loupe, with Lincoln's bust frosted against a glassy black background. While millions of proof coins were produced, only a few ever received the absolute top grade of PR70, and that microscopic difference in condition can translate into massive differences in price. A PR69 example might sell for $30 or $40, but a PR70 can sell for thousands, and if combined with an error or unique toning, potentially tens of thousands more. For high-end collectors, condition is everything, and they are willing to spend staggering amounts to secure what grading companies deem to be perfect. But why do values escalate into the hundreds of millions, numbers that seem completely unbelievable for a penny? The answer lies in the psychology of rarity and human desire. In the numismatic world, when there is only one known example of something, it takes on an almost mythical aura. If a single 1987 penny exists with an undiscovered, never-before-seen minting anomaly, it instantly becomes the holy grail for collectors. Billionaires compete in private auctions, driving the price beyond any rational market value, simply because each wants to be the sole owner of a unique piece of history. The same dynamic has been seen in fine art, where paintings by Picasso or Da Vinci sell for hundreds of millions, not because the paint and canvas are intrinsically worth that much, but because the item is irreplaceable and steeped in history. The same psychology applies to coins, and thus the story of a $354 million penny becomes not only possible but entirely believable when you consider how far collectors are willing to go for one-of-a-kind treasures, beyond errors and rarity. Another aspect that drives interest in the 1987 cent is toning. Over time, copper-plated coins can develop colorful surfaces due to environmental conditions. A normal penny might turn brown, but under the right circumstances a coin can tone with rainbow hues, deep blues, electric purples, fiery oranges, and vibrant greens. Collectors prize these naturally toned coins for their beauty and uniqueness. A spectacularly toned 1987 penny could attract furious bidding wars, especially if preserved in mint state condition. Beauty, after all, is subjective, and when two or more collectors fall in love with the same coin, prices can skyrocket unpredictably. The sheer mintage numbers of the 1987 penny are another fascinating dimension. Billions were struck, over 4.6 billion at the Philadelphia Mint, more than 4.5 billion at the Denver Mint, and about 4 million proof coins at San Francisco. On the surface, such huge mintages suggest that the coin is common and of little interest. But as history shows us, within such large numbers lies the potential for extreme rarity. Just as a diamond is rare among billions of grains of sand, so too can an extraordinary error or high-grade example stand out among billions of ordinary pennies. Collectors delight in searching through rolls, boxes, and even bank bags of 1987 cents in the hope of discovering that one extraordinary example hiding in plain sight, and then comes the role of grading services. Companies like PCGS and NGC that evaluate coins, assign them numerical grades from 1 to 70, and encapsulate them in tamper-proof holders. For the 1987 penny, grades at the top end, MS68 and MS69, are extremely rare, because the zinc cores and thin copper plating made these coins especially prone to spots, scratches, and corrosion. A true MS69 example of a business strike 1987 cent could command massive premiums, because collectors know how difficult it is to find one so flawless. In this way, even common coins become highly valuable at the absolute peak of condition. The grading industry has transformed the coin market, creating new levels of demand and pushing prices into the stratosphere. For top pop examples, the mythology surrounding coins like the 1987 cent often grows through stories shared in collecting communities, online forums, and auction results. Every time a headline appears, rare penny sells for $200,000 at auction, or unique coin discovered in pocket change, a wave of excitement ripples through the public. People begin checking their jars of pennies, wondering if they too could have a hidden fortune. And while the vast majority will not, the mere possibility keeps the legend alive. The 1987 penny has become a central part of that legend, with whispers of examples fetching prices in the hundreds of millions, making it not only a coin but a cultural phenomenon. And this is why the coin matters. It's not only about its physical properties, the weight of 2.5 grams, the copper-plated zinc composition, the 19mm diameter, it's about what it represents. It represents the possibility that something ordinary can become extraordinary, that hidden treasures lie all around us if we only look closely. The Lincoln cent in 1987 was a piece of pocket change, but in the hands of collectors it became a canvas for history, rarity, beauty, and imagination, and through these qualities it has achieved legendary value. As we continue unraveling the incredible journey of the 1987 1-cent coin, it becomes increasingly clear that this is far more than just a tiny piece of metal. It is a gateway into a world of discovery, history, and unexpected fortune. One of the most compelling aspects of the 1987 penny story is the fascination collectors have with auction records, because in numismatics auction houses are the stages upon which legends are born. When a coin crosses the block at Sotheby's, Heritage, Stacksbowers, or another premier house, it becomes part of an official record, its value confirmed by the hammer price, its story amplified by media headlines, and its desirability multiplied 100-fold. For coins like the 1987 cent, even rumors of astronomical sales, like the oft-quoted $354 million valuation, become self-perpetuating, spreading through news outlets, collector forums, and social media, until the legend is almost more powerful than the coin itself. Imagine the scene: an auction room filled with serious collectors, their eyes fixed on the podium as the auctioneer announces the appearance of a unique 1987 cent, perhaps a double die, perhaps a transitional copper strike, perhaps an off-center proof unlike any other. The bidding begins modestly, maybe a few $1,000s, but then quickly escalates. Phones ring, online bidders click furiously, in-room collectors raise their paddles. The price soars to tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, then millions. The atmosphere electrifies as two billionaire collectors lock horns, each determined not to lose. With every bid, the tension rises, and when the hammer finally falls at some mind-shattering number, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, the room erupts in applause and disbelief. And just like that, a new world record is set, and the legend of the 1987 penny grows even larger. But what makes this so fascinating is that the story isn't only about money. It's about people, ordinary and extraordinary alike, who have found themselves caught up in the mystery of the penny. Stories abound of collectors who stumbled upon life-changing discoveries in the most unexpected ways. A teenager searching through a jar of old coins finds a mint error and sells it for more than the cost of college tuition. A retiree who spent decades searching bankrolls finally uncovers a proof-like 1987 cent with rainbow toning that stuns the grading community and ends up being valued in the six figures. Tales like these feed the dream that anyone, anywhere, at any time, could uncover a fortune hidden in plain sight. The 1987 penny, with its billions of mintage, is the perfect candidate for such dreams, because it exists in so many homes, so many pockets, so many collections, that the possibility feels alive. Collectors often say that part of the magic of coins is holding history in your hands. When you look at a 1987 cent, you are looking at a piece of the year itself. What was happening in 1987? Ronald Reagan was president, the Cold War was entering its final phase, technology was advancing rapidly with personal computers spreading across households, and pop culture was exploding with movies, music, and fashion that defined an era. That penny minted in 1987 circulated through the hands of Americans living in that moment, perhaps used to buy a candy bar, perhaps saved as change from a movie ticket to see a blockbuster like The Untouchables or Predator. In this way, every coin carries not just its face value but the stories of the people and the times it passed through. For collectors, this human connection adds a layer of meaning that can never be measured in dollars alone, yet it is the staggering market values that keep drawing attention back to the 1987 penny. How can a coin worth a single cent rise to a market value of $354 million? The explanation lies in a convergence of rarity, condition, and cultural significance. Rare coins are like rare art pieces, they become symbols of status, investments of prestige, and trophies to be displayed. When one-of-a-kind coins enter the market, the wealthiest collectors see them as opportunities not only to own history but also to demonstrate their power. And so the prices become unmoored from rationality, soaring higher and higher until the numbers sound impossible, yet the sales are real. The market for ultra-rare coins is unlike any other, where supply and demand intersect in dramatic fashion because the supply of unique coins is literally one-to, and so the 1987 penny becomes more than a coin, it becomes a story. Every collector who hears of its million-dollar legends wants to check their own coins. Every beginner with a magnifying glass wants to inspect the date, the letters, the edges, hoping to find doubling, cracks, or plating errors. Every roll hunter dreams of being the one who uncovers the next great anomaly. The coin has become a mystery to be solved, a treasure hunt that requires patience, knowledge, and luck. And it is this spirit of the hunt that keeps the market alive, driving endless enthusiasm for even the most common issues. Of course, with such extraordinary values and stories come myths and exaggerations. On the internet, articles and videos proclaim that any 1987 penny is automatically worth hundreds of millions, which is not true, but the myths serve an important purpose: they capture the imagination of the public. They make people look more closely at their money. They draw people into the world of numismatics. And once someone discovers the beauty and depth of coin collecting, many of them stay, becoming lifelong hobbyists. So even if the legend of the $354 million penny is exaggerated, its power to inspire is priceless, and we must not forget the role of grading companies and population reports. Every time a grading service publishes how many 1987 cents have been certified at a given grade, collectors take note. If there are only a handful in MS69, the demand becomes intense. The same is true for proof coins. If only a few PR70 deep cameo examples exist, those few become the targets of collectors worldwide. These numbers are tracked obsessively, and the lower the population, the higher the value. This system transforms a massive mintage of billions into a game of rarity where only a tiny fraction achieve perfection, and that perfection commands astronomical prices. The physical coin itself, though humble, is a masterpiece of minting technology of its era. The zinc core with copper plating presented challenges, because zinc is softer and more reactive than copper, making the coins prone to corrosion and bubbles under the plating. This makes pristine examples extremely difficult to preserve, which is why high-grade survivors are so coveted. When you hold a shiny, lustrous 1987 cent in mint state condition, you are holding not only a survivor but a miracle of preservation, one that has escaped the scratches, dings, and spots that ruin most coins within days of entering circulation. That rarity of condition is one of the quiet secrets behind why some examples can climb to outrageous values while others remain at face value. Collectors also love the symbolism on the coin. Abraham Lincoln on the obverse represents unity, freedom, and leadership, while the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse represents national memory and pride. Together, they tell the story of America's journey, its struggles and triumphs, its ideals and realities. To collectors, owning such coins is like owning a piece of the nation's story in miniature form. And when one of those coins turns out to be unique, it becomes not just a symbol of the nation but a symbol of personal achievement and legacy for the owner. The 1987 penny, then, is more than a coin, it is a dream. It is a dream that one day you might open a drawer, look into a jar of pennies, and find a tiny, copper-colored disc that could change your life forever. It is a dream that something so ordinary could secretly be extraordinary. It is a dream that within the billions of coins produced, there might exist one that is yours to discover, one that the world will recognize as priceless. And it is dreams like this that keep the stories alive, that keep collectors searching, that keep the legend of the $354 million penny burning brighter every year. The more we study the 1987 1-cent coin, the more layers unfold, because while at first it seems to be just another small piece of everyday currency, the truth is that it sits at the crossroads of history, technology, artistry, and human obsession. To understand why the coin fascinates collectors so much, we have to look more closely at the minting process itself in 1987. Because the United States Mint was at a stage of transition, both in terms of the materials used and the machinery employed. Since 1982, the mint had shifted from a predominantly copper cent to the modern zinc core with a thin copper plating. By 1987, this new composition was standard, yet it was still presenting challenges. The zinc core, being softer and more chemically reactive, often caused the copper layer to bubble, blister, or peel in some cases, leading to coins with plating errors. These kinds of errors became highly collectible over time, because each bubble, streak, or flake created a unique appearance. Some coins looked like they carried mysterious scars, others developed odd shapes or patterns that collectors found intriguing, and the more dramatic the error, the more valuable the coin. Mint production in 1987 was massive, because the 1-cent coin was still one of the most heavily used denominations in everyday commerce. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 4.6 billion coins, the Denver Mint added another 4.5 billion, and the San Francisco Mint produced proof coins for collectors, totaling around 4 million pieces. With numbers this large, it seems impossible that any of them could be rare, yet that is the paradox of coin collecting. Even within billions, the tiniest anomalies become immensely desirable. It is like searching for needles in a haystack, except that the haystack is the size of a mountain and the needles are made of gold. Collectors often break down the 1987 cents by their mint marks. The Philadelphia coins carry no mint mark, a tradition dating back to the earliest days of the mint, while the Denver coins carry the small d mint mark to the right of the date, and the San Francisco proof coins display an S. To casual users, these mint marks mean nothing, but to collectors they are the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. Proof coins, for example, were never intended to circulate, and when one is found in change, it raises immediate questions about how it escaped collector packaging and entered the wild. Such finds are unusual and exciting, and sometimes proof coins in circulation carry scratches or wear that give them unique stories of their own. The collector market for 1987 cents is also shaped by condition rarity. Most coins from that year exist in circulated condition, scratched, discolored, or corroded. Finding a perfect example, one that has survived in pristine state with full mint luster, is like finding a diamond among gravel. The grading companies, PCGS and NGC, assign grades up to MS70 for circulation strikes and PR70 for proofs, but achieving these grades is nearly impossible. The surfaces must be flawless under magnification, the strike must be sharp, the luster must be full and uninterrupted. For the 1987 cent, most top-end examples cap at MS67 or MS68, with MS69 being almost unheard of. That rarity of grade makes such coins intensely valuable, and when combined with error status or unique toning, the value can multiply exponentially. One of the more fascinating collector phenomena with the 1987 penny is the role of toning. Natural toning is caused by exposure to air, humidity, and chemicals in the environment, and for copper-plated zinc coins it can lead to extraordinary patterns in colors. Some coins develop fiery red and orange highlights, others turn deep violet, blue, or green, and the most spectacular display rainbow bands across the surface. Collectors compete fiercely for such toned coins, especially if the toning is natural and aesthetically beautiful. Artificial toning exists, of course, but experts can usually detect it. A naturally rainbow-toned 1987 cent in mint state condition could easily spark a bidding war at auction, driving the value into thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. In the mythology of rare coins, even beauty itself becomes a source of value. Now let us compare the 1987 penny to other legendary coins in American history, because context shows why values can rise so high. Consider the 1909 SVDB cent, the first year of issue for the Lincoln cent, with the designer's initials prominently placed on the reverse. That coin is famous for its rarity, with only 484,000 struck, and today it sells for thousands even in lower grades. Or take the 1955 double die cent, where dramatic doubling on the obverse letters makes it instantly recognizable. That coin routinely sells for tens of thousands of dollars. And of course there are the great rarities like the 1943 copper cent, struck accidentally during the steel penny year, examples of which have sold for over $1 million. When you place the 1987 cent into this lineage, you can see that while it may not have been intended as a rarity, its potential errors, anomalies, and unique high-grade survivors place it within the same tradition of coins that started ordinary but became extraordinary through accidents of history. The global fascination with U.S. coins also plays a role in the 1987 penny's legend. American coins are collected worldwide, prized for their artistry, their history, and their role as symbols of one of the most influential nations on Earth. In Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and South America, collectors search for Lincoln cents, and auctions often see international bidders pushing prices higher. For someone in another country, owning a rare American cent is like owning a piece of American history itself. And because billions of pennies circulate globally through travel, trade, and international exchanges, the 1987 penny may be hiding in a desk drawer in another country, waiting to be discovered by someone far from where it was minted. That universality gives the coin a reach far beyond U.S. borders, magnifying its desirability and market value. Another aspect that amplifies the myth of the 1987 penny is storytelling. Humans are natural storytellers, and coins like this thrive on the tales told about them. When someone hears about a penny selling for hundreds of millions, even if the story is exaggerated or misinterpreted, it plants a seed in the imagination. Suddenly, people begin checking their change, dreaming about life-changing discoveries. Families gather around the kitchen table, pouring out jars of pennies and looking closely with magnifying glasses. Children become fascinated with coins, and a new generation of collectors is born. The legend of the 1987 penny is less about the certainty of a jackpot and more about the possibility, the chance that something extraordinary might lie hidden in plain sight. That possibility is priceless, and it is why the coin continues to captivate even decades after it was minted. When you hold a 1987 penny, you are holding more than a coin. You are holding the embodiment of America's longest-running coin series, a piece of art designed by Victor David Brenner and Frank Gasparo, a piece of history from the Reagan era, a piece of technology from the age of copper-plated zinc, and a piece of mystery that continues to inspire collectors everywhere. You are holding a symbol of how something so small can mean so much. And when one of those coins happens to be unique, whether by error, by grade, or by beauty, it becomes priceless, and the market responds accordingly, sometimes with numbers so high they seem beyond belief. But belief is what makes collecting what it is, because without belief in the value of history, art, and rarity, a coin would be nothing more than metal. With belief, it becomes a treasure. The 1987 penny continues to fascinate because it stands at the intersection of ordinary and extraordinary, and nowhere is this more evident than in the psychology of the collector. To most people, a penny is simply a nuisance, something left in a jar or dropped on the sidewalk without a thought. But to a collector, a penny is a window into history, an artifact of national identity, and potentially a hidden treasure. The human mind is wired to seek patterns, to search for the rare and unusual, and this is why the tiniest variation in a coin becomes so captivating. When a collector looks at a 1987 penny, they do not see just Lincoln and the memorial, they see possibilities, doubling, misstrikes, off-center strikes, transitional errors, and great rarities. Each coin becomes a puzzle to solve, and solving that puzzle could yield immense rewards. Stories abound of ordinary people who stumbled upon coins worth fortunes, and these stories feed the dream that fuels numismatics. Someone emptying a drawer finds an old cent, checks the date, and realizes it is a key rarity. Another person searching through a bankroll uncovers an error penny that sells for thousands. These real stories echo through collectors' circles and make headlines in newspapers, inspiring countless others to look more closely at their own change. In this sense, the 1987 penny is not just a collectible, it is a teacher, a reminder to pay attention to details, to value what others overlook, to believe that treasures can be hidden in plain sight. The myths surrounding the 1987 cent are part of what give it its legendary aura. Across the internet, blogs and videos proclaim values in the hundreds of millions, declaring that every 1987 penny could be worth life-changing sums. While the reality is more nuanced, most are worth face value, with rare examples fetching significant sums. The myth has power. The myth makes people curious, and curiosity leads to learning, and learning leads to collecting. Even if most people never find a multi-million-dollar coin, the excitement of the hunt creates a new generation of numismatists who discover the beauty of coins as a hobby. This cycle of myth and discovery ensures that coins like the 1987 cent will never fade into obscurity. But what exactly fuels those astronomical values like $354 million? It is not simply the coin itself, but the context that surrounds it. First, rarity. If only one or two examples of a certain error exist, then by definition the supply is limited. Second, demand. If multiple wealthy collectors desire the same coin, competition drives up the price. Third, symbolism. The coin must carry meaning beyond its metal. The 1987 penny carries the face of Lincoln, one of the most admired figures in history, and the memorial, a symbol of national unity. Combine all three: rarity, demand, and symbolism, and the result is a recipe for value that can skyrocket beyond reason. Another fascinating angle is how the coin collecting world overlaps with the investment world. Some collectors are driven by love of history, others by the thrill of the hunt, but a significant portion sees coins as investments, as alternative assets to stocks, bonds, or real estate. Rare coins are tangible, portable, and often appreciate in value over time. For billionaires, owning a coin like a unique 1987 penny is not only a status symbol but also a way to diversify wealth. In this sense, the market value of coins ties directly into broader financial systems, and when economic uncertainty rises, tangible assets like gold, silver, and rare coins often surge in demand. The 1987 penny, though struck in zinc and copper, benefits from this psychology, as its rarity and symbolism make it attractive not just as a collectible but as an investment. Famous discoveries add fuel to the fire. One of the great traditions in numismatics is the story of the coin found in change. Think of the 1943 copper cent, discovered by a young collector who realized his coin was heavier than it should be, or the 1955 double die cent found by workers in cigarette packs given as change. These stories show that even the rarest coins can surface in the most ordinary places. For the 1987 penny, the possibility of undiscovered rarities remains alive, because billions were minted and not all have been carefully examined. The idea that the next great rarity could be sitting in a coffee can, a piggy bank, or a pocket keeps collectors searching tirelessly. Part of what makes this so gripping is the way coins bridge the gap between everyday life and incredible wealth. Unlike fine art, which exists in museums and galleries, or rare cars, which sit in garages, coins circulate in the hands of ordinary people. Every transaction could potentially include a hidden treasure. The humble act of buying a soda or receiving change from a grocery store becomes an adventure, because inside the change might lie a penny worth millions. This accessibility makes coin collecting one of the most democratic hobbies in the world. Anyone can participate, and anyone can strike gold if luck and attention align. The legend of the 1987 penny also connects to the broader tradition of American numismatics, where ordinary coins become extraordinary because of the stories they tell. Think of the 1804 silver dollar, known as the King of American Coins, or the 1933 double eagle, which sold for over $18 million. These coins were not valuable because of their metal but because of their rarity, history, and symbolism. The 1987 penny, with its tales of $100 million values, fits into this lineage. It shows that rarity and desire can transform anything, even a coin most people ignore, into a treasure of unimaginable worth. Collectors often say that coins are history in your hands, but they are also dreams in your hands. When you look at a 1987 penny, you are not just looking at copper and zinc. You are looking at the possibility that this tiny disc might be different, might be rare, might be valuable. You are looking at a coin that once bought candy, that once jingled in the pockets of millions, but that might also, in the right conditions, be priceless. That duality is the essence of numismatics, the ordinary and the extraordinary living side by side, indistinguishable until someone looks closely enough to see the difference, and so the 1987 penny endures as one of the most talked about coins in modern collecting. Not because every example is valuable, but because every example carries the possibility of value. Possibility is what keeps collectors searching, what keeps auction houses buzzing, what keeps headlines flowing. Possibility is what transforms a coin into a legend. And the legend of the 1987 penny, with whispers of sales reaching $354 million, with stories of errors and rarities, with dreams of discovery and wealth, is one of the most enduring legends of them all. When we talk about the 1987 penny and its place in numismatics, one cannot ignore the world of mint errors, because it is within these small mistakes that immense value is often found. Every coin is struck by machinery designed for precision, but no system is flawless, and in those rare moments when something goes wrong, history and fortune are created. The 1987 cent is no exception, and countless error types exist that can turn a coin from a single cent into thousands or even millions of dollars. The most famous errors that collectors hunt for include double dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, and transitional errors, each of which tells a unique story of how a mistake at the mint became a treasure in the hands of collectors. Double die errors are among the most desirable, and they occur when the coin's die is impressed twice at slightly different angles during the hubbing process. The result is doubling in the letters, numbers, or design elements of the coin. In the case of a 1987 penny, collectors scour the date, the word liberty, and the phrase "In God we trust" for signs of doubling. On some examples, the doubling is so dramatic that it can be seen without magnification, while on others, a microscope is needed to confirm it. The thrill of spotting such an error is like striking gold, because dramatic double dies can bring thousands of dollars at auction. Another fascinating error is the off-center strike, where the coin is not properly seated in the press when struck. This leads to coins where the design is shifted to one side, sometimes leaving large blank areas of metal visible. Off-center 1987 pennies are highly collectible, especially those with dates still fully visible. If a coin is 50% off-center but still shows the year, its rarity skyrockets, making it both a conversation piece and a valuable find. Broad strikes are another category of errors that draw attention. A broad strike occurs when the coin is struck outside the retaining collar that normally shapes the edge. Without this collar, the metal expands outward, creating a coin that appears wider and thinner than normal. These odd-shaped coins always attract curiosity, and for the 1987 cent, they demonstrate how even small mechanical misalignments can produce coins worth far more than their face value. Clipped planchets are equally intriguing, caused when the blank discs of metal punched from a strip overlap, leaving coins with crescent-shaped bites missing. These errors are visually striking and instantly noticeable. A 1987 penny with a dramatic clip might sell for hundreds, especially if combined with other unusual features like die cracks or off-center strikes. Die cracks and die breaks represent another dimension of value. Over time, the metal dies that strike coins develop small fractures, and when these cracks transfer onto coins, they create raised lines across the design. Collectors often call these cuts when large pieces of the die break away, leaving blank areas on the coin. Each die crack pattern is unique, almost like a fingerprint, and for the 1987 penny, they serve as both an error and a window into the wear and tear process of mint machinery. Among the most tantalizing possibilities is the transitional error. Transitional errors occur when coins are struck on planchets from the wrong year, often when the mint switches metals or designs. A famous example is the 1943 copper penny, struck when most were supposed to be made of steel, now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. For the 1987 penny, transitional errors would involve wrong planchets being fed into the press, such as a cent struck on a dime planchet, or a cent struck on leftover copper planchets instead of zinc. These ultra-rare mistakes, if discovered, could be worth millions, and some collectors speculate that undiscovered transitional 1987 pennies may still exist in circulation or in old collections waiting to be found. The allure of these errors lies not only in their rarity but in their unpredictability. Unlike a key date coin where rarity is predetermined by low mintage, error coins can appear anywhere, in any year, in any mint. The 1987 penny becomes a canvas for these mistakes, a blank slate upon which the machinery of the mint occasionally left its unintentional art. Each error tells a story, each story adds value, and each discovery fuels the passion of the hunt. What makes the search for errors even more compelling is how easy it is for anyone to participate. All it takes is a magnifying glass, good lighting, and patience. Collectors around the world spend hours carefully examining every coin that passes through their hands, hoping to spot a doubled letter, a clipped edge, or a shifted strike. The thrill is in the possibility that the next coin could be the one. And because billions of 1987 pennies were minted, the odds of undiscovered errors still being out there remain very real. The marketplace for these errors is alive and thriving. Auction houses, online platforms, and private dealers all see bidding wars for rare varieties, with collectors competing fiercely for ownership. A dramatic off-center 1987 penny might fetch hundreds, while a unique double die or transitional error could climb into the millions. And in the mythology that surrounds coins, stories of $354 million valuations are whispered like legends, feeding the imagination of new collectors and inspiring them to search even harder. For many, the error hunt is not just about money but about connection. Finding an error coin is like uncovering a secret hidden by time, a secret that only the most attentive can reveal. It rewards patience, knowledge, and dedication, qualities that define the collector spirit. And when the coin in question is a 1987 penny, one of the most talked about modern cents, the excitement multiplies. The idea that something so ordinary can harbor such extraordinary secrets keeps the world of numismatics endlessly fascinating. The real magic of the 1987 penny is that it invites everyone to become a detective, and in this world of hidden treasures, the tools of the trade are surprisingly simple. Anyone can take a handful of pennies from their pocket, sit under a lamp with a magnifying glass, and begin the journey of discovery. The first and most important step is to slow down and really look at the coin. Most people glance at pennies and see nothing but a copper-colored blur, but the collector learns to look for detail. Look closely at the date, at the letters of liberty, at the phrase "In God We Trust." Look at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, where tiny lines and shadows can reveal doubling or die cracks. The difference between a common penny and one worth millions often hides in these small details. Weight is another crucial test. A 1987 penny, being primarily zinc with a thin copper plating, should weigh about 2.5 grams. But coins struck on leftover copper planchets, or coins struck on dime or foreign blanks, will often weigh differently. That is why collectors invest in small digital scales, precise enough to measure down to 1/100th of a gram. A penny weighing 3.1 grams might suggest copper instead of zinc, and that tiny difference can mean thousands of dollars. A penny weighing less, perhaps closer to 2.2 grams, could indicate a wrong planchet, and that is where excitement builds, because it means you may be holding something extraordinary. Sound is another old trick that experienced collectors swear by. A copper penny and a zinc penny do not sound the same when dropped on a hard surface. Copper produces a sharper, more ringing tone, while zinc gives off a duller clink. Though this method is not as precise as weighing, it can sometimes alert a collector that something unusual is in their hand. Combined with other observations, even sound becomes part of the toolkit in the hunt for rare 1987 cents. Magnification is perhaps the most essential tool of all. Many collectors begin with simple magnifying glasses, but as they grow more serious, they invest in jeweler's loupes or USB microscopes that connect to computers and phones. Under magnification, the world of the 1987 penny opens up like a secret universe. Doubling on the letters, cracks running across Lincoln's face, tiny die breaks on the memorial, all of these details that escape the naked eye suddenly become clear. The discovery of a double die or a misstrike often comes down to the patient work of magnification. Beyond tools, knowledge is power. Collectors study reference guides, online databases, and auction catalogs, learning which varieties have been confirmed, what they look like, and how much they have sold for in the past. The more you learn, the sharper your eye becomes, and the more likely you are to spot a valuable rarity. For the 1987 penny, this means understanding what normal coins should look like, so that any deviation stands out like a beacon. It also means knowing which errors exist and which are only rumored, so that the search can be both realistic and rewarding. Authentication is the next step once something unusual is found. While anyone can spot an error, the coin must be verified by professionals to achieve its true value. Organizations like the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, specialize in grading and certifying coins. When a 1987 penny is submitted, experts examine it under powerful microscopes, confirm whether the error is genuine, and assign it a grade based on condition. A coin that is authenticated and encapsulated in a plastic holder becomes infinitely more marketable, because buyers trust the certification and are willing to pay higher prices. Without authentication, the value of even the rarest 1987 cent remains uncertain. The process of submitting coins is itself part of the collector's journey. You pack the coin carefully, send it off to the grading service, and wait weeks or even months for the results. The day the coin comes back, sealed in a slab with its grade and error noted, is one of the most exciting in a collector's life. For some, it brings validation of a find worth thousands. For a lucky few, it reveals a once-in-a-lifetime treasure that could sell for millions. The anticipation, the waiting, the final reveal, this is the drama of numismatics, but the story does not end with grading. Once authenticated, the coin enters the marketplace, and here the value truly comes alive. Some collectors choose to auction their coins through major houses like Heritage Auctions or Stacksbowers, where bidding wars can send prices soaring. Others prefer private sales, where wealthy collectors negotiate directly, sometimes paying astronomical sums for coins that complete their collections. A 1987 penny authenticated as a rare error could pass from hand to hand, each time increasing in value as its story grows more famous. And in rare cases, the bidding frenzy itself can push a coin into mythical territory, where headlines claim sales of $354 million or more, capturing the imagination of the world. For those who dream of finding such treasures, the key is persistence. Checking one penny will rarely yield results, but checking thousands, tens of thousands, even millions, increases the odds. Many serious collectors order rolls and boxes of pennies directly from banks, spending countless hours sorting through them. This is known as coin roll hunting, and it has become a hobby in its own right, with entire online communities dedicated to sharing discoveries. The excitement of opening a roll and spotting an unusual 1987 penny is indescribable, because it means the search has paid off, and yet, the hunt is not just about wealth, it is about connection to history, patience, and discovery. Each penny tells a story, whether it turns out to be a rare error or just an ordinary coin. For collectors, even the act of searching creates a bond with the past, a bond with millions of other people who have held that same coin over the decades. The 1987 cent is not just a piece of metal, but a witness to life, travel, and history, and when you search for errors, you are not only looking for wealth, you are uncovering the hidden stories of America itself. The 1987 penny does not exist in isolation, but is part of the grand story of the Lincoln cent, a coin series that has become the most collected in the history of the United States. Since its first appearance in 1909, when Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln was unveiled to mark the centennial of Lincoln's birth, the penny has been both a symbol and a necessity. It was the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real person, breaking from the tradition of allegorical figures like Liberty, and from that moment forward it carried a special place in the American imagination. To hold a penny was to hold a piece of Lincoln himself, a daily reminder of the man who preserved the Union and ended slavery. That symbolism alone guaranteed the coin's popularity. Over the decades, the Lincoln cent evolved, but always retained its essence. From 1909 to 1958, the coin bore the beloved wheat ears design on the reverse, which collectors now call the wheat penny. These coins, especially early dates and errors, have become iconic and highly sought after. In 1959, to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth and the 50th anniversary of the cent itself, the reverse was changed to feature the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo. This design ran for half a century, from 1959 to 2008, making the 1987 penny part of a long era of memorial cents. The memorial design carried its own symbolism. On the back of the coin, in the tiny engraving of the monument, if you looked closely with a magnifying glass, you could see a small seated figure of Lincoln inside the memorial. This meant that the penny was one of the few U.S. coins to feature the same person on both sides. Collectors loved this detail, because it gave the coin a sense of depth and artistry often overlooked in everyday use. By 1987, the memorial cent had been around for nearly 3 decades, but its importance remained undiminished, tying each coin back to Lincoln and the ideals of unity, freedom, and perseverance. What makes the 1987 penny especially fascinating is its placement in the broader history of American coinage. By the 1980s, the United States Mint was undergoing significant changes, responding to the rising costs of metals, inflation, and advances in minting technology. In 1982, the switch from copper to zinc planchets marked a turning point. For generations, pennies had been nearly pure copper, but economic realities forced the mint to adopt a cheaper core with only a thin copper coating. This change altered not just the composition but also the sound, feel, and collectability of the penny. By 1987, the zinc-based penny was the norm, but collectors never forgot the copper heritage, and they constantly wondered if some 1987 cents might have been struck on leftover copper planchets, creating ultra-rare transitional errors. That possibility alone adds immense intrigue to this otherwise ordinary coin. The penny also holds a cultural role far beyond its face value. Americans often joke about pennies being nearly worthless in daily life, but at the same time they hold deep sentimental attachment to them. The phrase "a penny saved is a penny earned" reflects thrift and wisdom. The tradition of lucky pennies picked up from the ground connects coins to superstition and hope. Pennies are placed on railroad tracks to be flattened, used in school science experiments, and tucked into shoes for good luck. Every child who has collected coins has started with pennies, because they are accessible, plentiful, and rich in history. The 1987 penny, therefore, is part of this fabric of everyday life, and when stories arise of individual pennies being worth hundreds of millions of dollars, it elevates something familiar into something mythical. The Lincoln Cent series has also witnessed some of the most dramatic moments in American numismatic history. The 1909 SBDB, the 1914D, the 1922 NOD, the 1955 Double Die, all of these rarities are household names among collectors, commanding high values and inspiring decades of searching. The 1987 penny, while not famous in the same way, carries the potential for similar discoveries, and its sheer numbers mean the hunt never ends. With over 11 billion minted across Philadelphia and Denver, the chances for unusual varieties, misstrikes, or rare survivors in pristine condition are endless. This abundance combined with possibility keeps collectors engaged year after year. It is also worth noting how the penny connects generations. A coin struck in 1987 may have passed from parent to child, from grandparent to grandchild, becoming part of family memories. A penny found in change today could have been used 3 decades ago in a vending machine, a phone booth, or a corner store that no longer exists. Every scratch and mark on its surface tells a story of circulation, of lives touched, of purchases made. For many, coin collecting is not just about rarity and value but about preserving these tiny fragments of human history. The 1987 penny becomes more than money, it becomes memory cast in metal. By the late 2000s, the penny design changed again, as the United States celebrated Lincoln's bicentennial in 2009 with 4 new reverses, and then in 2010 introduced the shield design that continues to this day. This means that the 1987 penny belongs firmly to the memorial era, a design that now exists only in history. Younger generations who only see shield pennies in circulation are beginning to view memorial cents with nostalgia, increasing their appeal as collectibles. In this way, time itself is increasing the significance of the 1987 cent, pushing it from modern to vintage in the eyes of collectors, and so the 1987 penny sits at a crossroads: old enough to carry nostalgia, young enough to remain abundant, ordinary enough to be overlooked, and yet extraordinary enough to inspire myths of values reaching into the hundreds of millions. It is this tension, between the everyday and the legendary, that makes the 1987 cent so endlessly fascinating. Collectors know that in the broad sweep of history, the Lincoln cent is a giant, and every year within it holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. The 1987 issue is one of those years, quietly holding its place, whispering its story, and promising that treasures might still be found within its billions of examples. One of the most thrilling aspects of the 1987 penny's legend is the auction world, because it is in this arena that ordinary-looking coins are transformed into treasures worth staggering sums. Auctions bring together collectors, investors, historians, and dreamers, all united by their passion for rare coins. The 1987 cent, like other modern issues, might seem too common to deserve a spotlight, yet when a rare variety or spectacular error is discovered, it often becomes the star of the show. The auction room, or in today's world, the online auction feed, becomes electric as bids climb higher and higher, each one reflecting not just financial value but pride, desire, and prestige. Collectors are not simply buying metal, they are buying stories. Imagine a 1987 penny that was discovered to be struck on a copper planchet left over from before 1982. Instantly, it transforms from a zinc-based cent worth 1 cent into a historical curiosity bridging 2 eras of American coinage. A coin like that, authenticated and graded in top condition, might easily spark a bidding war. The first bid may open at a modest sum, but as collectors recognize the rarity, the numbers rise into the tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Soon, the psychology of competition takes over, and the coin becomes more than a collectible, it becomes a prize, a trophy, a once-in-a-lifetime acquisition that only one person can win. This psychology is what drives prices into the stratosphere. Wealthy collectors, often with millions or even billions at their disposal, are not content simply to own coins, they want to own the coin, the finest, the rarest, the most talked about. For them, paying astronomical sums is not just about value, it is about identity. To say you own the most valuable 1987 penny ever sold is to claim a place in the history of numismatics itself. It is a badge of honor, a symbol of status, and a story to be told for generations. This desire for exclusivity pushes coins like the 1987 cent from modest origins into mythical valuations of $354 million and beyond. There are countless examples of this phenomenon in coin history. The 1933 Double Eagle sold for over $18 million, even though its gold content was worth far less. The 1804 silver dollar, known as the King of American coins, has sold for millions, despite being made of ordinary silver. In these cases, what mattered was not the metal but the story, the rarity, and the passion of collectors who refused to let the coin slip away. The 1987 penny fits this tradition perfectly, because while billions were struck, the rarest examples, errors, proofs, or high-grade survivors, become singular stories in themselves. Bidding wars can sometimes feel like battles of pride as much as battles of wallets. 2 determined collectors may lock horns over a coin, each unwilling to back down. Every new bid is not just money, it is a statement of determination, a refusal to lose. The auctioneer's hammer hovers in suspense, calling going once, going twice, only to be interrupted by another sudden bid. The audience gasps, the tension builds, and the coin climbs in value before their eyes. This drama is part of what makes auctions so captivating, both for those in the room and for collectors watching from afar. When the coin is finally hammered down, the room often erupts in applause, because everyone knows they have just witnessed history. The rumor mill surrounding coins like the 1987 cent adds another layer of fascination. Stories circulate of private sales at unimaginable prices, whispered figures exchanged between dealers and collectors. While not all of these tales can be confirmed, they fuel the mystique of the coin. One person might claim to have seen a 1987 penny sell for tens of millions, another might insist that a unique error changed hands in a secret deal for over $300 million. These stories blur the line between fact and legend, but in numismatics, legends often carry their own kind of truth, inspiring generations of searchers to look more closely at the coins in their pockets. Auctions also highlight the role of condition in determining value. A 1987 penny in circulated condition might be worth very little, even if it has a minor error, but a flawless uncirculated specimen, graded MS-68 or higher, can command extraordinary sums. The difference between a coin worth $50 and one worth $50,000 can be as subtle as a single scratch or blemish. This is why collectors take such care in handling coins, using gloves, protective holders, and climate-controlled storage. A pristine 1987 penny is not just a coin, it is a fragile work of art, preserved against the ravages of time, carrying within it the potential for greatness at auction. The digital age has expanded these opportunities even further. Online auction platforms allow collectors from around the globe to compete in real time, sending bids skyrocketing at the click of a button. A rare 1987 penny can now attract attention not only from American collectors but from enthusiasts in Europe, Asia, and beyond, creating truly global competition. This global demand ensures that once a coin captures attention, its value has no ceiling, because somewhere in the world there is always someone willing to pay just a little more to secure it. All of this combines to make the auction world a place where myths are born and fortunes are made. The 1987 penny, whether discovered in a pocket, pulled from a roll, or found in an old collection, carries with it the potential to ignite bidding wars that defy imagination. For collectors, the dream is not just about owning the coin but about being part of the story, about watching a simple cent transform into an object of desire commanding hundreds of millions of dollars. And it is this dream, this vision of extraordinary value, that keeps the legend of the 1987 penny alive in the hearts of collectors everywhere. And so we arrive at the heart of the mystery, the part of the story that leaves people in awe every single time they hear it, the understanding that the 1987 1-cent coin is not simply a tiny piece of copper-plated zinc but a doorway into history, into passion, into dreams, into legends that refuse to fade away. For collectors, for historians, for everyday people who once held one in their palm and never gave it another thought, this coin represents the possibility that something so ordinary could secretly be extraordinary. Think about it, billions of them were minted, poured into circulation, tossed into drawers and jars, spent without hesitation, ignored as just another penny and change. And yet, within that massive production lies the chance of uniqueness, the chance that one coin, perhaps through a minting error, perhaps through an exceptional level of preservation, could rise to become a world record treasure, a coin capable of changing lives overnight. The dream of finding such a coin keeps people searching. Parents pass this dream down to their children, coin roll hunters spend hours poring over stacks of pennies, and collectors carefully study every detail of the 1987 issue, hoping to spot the smallest anomaly that might transform a 1-cent piece into a multi-million-dollar rarity. It is not greed that drives them but fascination, the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery. And it is this spirit, this shared sense of wonder, that elevates the coin far beyond its 1-cent face value. The weight of the coin, about 2.5 grams, the composition of copper-plated zinc, the familiar Lincoln obverse, the stately Lincoln Memorial reverse, all of these technical details remind us of its place in the great tradition of American coinage. But they also remind us that value is not defined by metal alone. If it were, the coin would never be worth more than a cent. Value is defined by rarity, by story, by human emotion, by desire. When collectors speak of a 1987 penny worth $354 million, they are not speaking of its physical substance, they are speaking of its symbolic power, the fact that it carries within it all the excitement of the numismatic world compressed into a tiny circle of metal. Legends like these are not new. Throughout history, people have attached great meaning to small objects, whether jewels, relics, or ancient coins. The 1987 penny joins this lineage, becoming more than currency. It becomes a relic of modern America, a reminder of the 1980s, of the years of change, of technology advancing, of culture shifting, of America continuing its story. Each coin is a frozen moment in time, a piece of history small enough to slip into your pocket yet powerful enough to be worth hundreds of millions under the right circumstances. And perhaps that is the most important truth of all, the 1987 penny is not just about money, it is about possibility. It whispers to us that greatness can be hidden in the smallest places, that treasures can be overlooked by billions yet recognized by the few with eyes to see. It tells us that history is not only found in books or museums but also in the change we carry, in the coins we pass from hand to hand, in the symbols we take for granted. Every penny has a story, but some stories soar higher, touch deeper, shine brighter. Collectors know this, and so they search. They tell the stories, they build the legends, they give value to what others overlook. The market may put a price on the coin: 50 cents, $500, $50,000, or in legendary cases, $354 million, but the true worth lies in what it represents: the union of history and imagination, of chance and destiny, of metal and meaning. So the next time you see a penny from 1987, do not dismiss it as just another coin. Hold it a little longer, look a little closer, let your mind wander. Ask yourself, could this be one of the rare ones, one of the hidden treasures, one of the coins that bridges the gap between ordinary and extraordinary? Maybe, just maybe, that tiny disc in your hand is worth more than all the treasures you can imagine. And even if it isn't, even if it remains a single cent, the dream it carries is priceless. That is the magic of the 1987 penny, a magic that continues to inspire, to excite, and to remind us that even the smallest things can hold the biggest stories.